our annual program of the Institute for Spiritual Culture. So first of all, welcome everyone and thank you for coming. Thank you for showing some interest in our topic of Discover the Glories of Our Mothers. For those of you who are attending our program for the first time, let me share a little bit of background information. So it is exactly 5 years ago that we inaugurated this little Institute for Spiritual Culture. It was also 2 days after the last Maha Abhishek, actually. I remember distinctly. And the inspiration for this Institute for Spiritual Culture I had because for the last 20 years I have been very much involved in the preaching in Bangladesh. And for those of you who are not so familiar with Bangladesh, it's actually not very far from here. It's just 1.5 hours drive and you come to the Bangladeshi border. And Bangladesh is a very unique place. It is East Bengal. It is the place where most of Mahaprabhu's associates come from, like Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, even Mahaprabhu's parents, Jagannath Mishra, Sachi Mata, they come from East Bengal, which is now Bangladesh. So many more actually, even Madhavendra Puri, Mukunda Datta, Vasudev Datta, so many personalities come from that part of Bengal. And ironically, because it is a Muslim country, this actually has preserved our Vaishnav culture immensely, because the Muslims are not so fond of all the modern ideas. So that has kept our Vaishnav culture so alive. And, you know, over the last 20 years I have been spending considerable time there, traveling with the devotees, preaching with them, living with them. When I'm there, I'm only with the locals. There's no Western devotees living there. And over the last 20 years, I have received such transformational insights, actually, and which has deeply affected my personal spiritual practice, and of course also my preaching. And I could almost say my whole worldview was put upside down, actually, of how civilized, cultured human life is meant to be lived. And yeah, so I started thinking, you know, not everybody can go to Bangladesh, so that's why I felt the need for some systematic training and education in this topic of culture. And that's why I thought, all right, let me establish a little institute for spiritual culture. And I developed all kinds of courses, 6 courses actually. They quite naturally grew over the years. And for example, one course is on the Vanaprastha ashram. There's nobody even talking much about it. Then one course about the need for sheltering relationships. One course about family life as an ashram, one course about child raising, one course about the man-woman dynamics, one course about the false ego, our constant companion and troublemaker. So many topics which are all very much connected with this topic of culture. So this little Institute of Spiritual Culture, it is basically an educational institution within the institution of ISKCON. Like last week we had an international conference for education, and there are so many initiatives were presented, which are all directed towards one aspect of education. So, and in the same way, my humble attempt is to bring attention to this topic of culture. And since the last 5 years, since this inauguration, every year we have this annual program which is like a symposium type program where I'm setting a theme and I'm inviting different speakers, and yes, just to bring attention to the importance of culture, because we can say our education at this point is often directed very much towards Shastric education. We like to learn our philosophy, memorize verses, preach them, repeat them. But that's step number one, according to my humble understanding. But the step number two is to actually live accordingly. That's a challenge. Yes, that's not so easy, actually. And especially these days, that materialistic propaganda which we are surrounded by is so strong, and the conditioning is so subtle and deep. It is not so easy to transform this, actually. And let me mention a few little points about culture. Let us first of all understand, how does culture develop? How does it come about? It actually comes about by practically living a certain worldview, a certain philosophy, a certain ideology. By practically living it, all different aspects of the culture develop in practical life. So, and there's only two main cultures in this world: materialistic culture, spiritual culture. And in Bhagavad Gita 269, Krishna says, what is day to the common person is night to the introspective sage, and vice versa. So that gives us some understanding that these two cultures are indeed like day and night, because they're based on very different worldviews. In a nutshell, materialistic culture is all about sense enjoyment and all about feeding the ego, actually, putting a lot of emphasis on bodily identification, gross and subtle. It's all about becoming an big important person. That's what material life is all about. Showing off. One can almost say, the more expert we become in showing off, the more successful one becomes in material life, right? And the media, Facebook, all these things, they're immensely helping in that endeavor to somehow become prominent and known and. But spiritual life is based on the opposite worldview. There we want to minimize and reduce sense gratification and ultimately give up the taste for it, replace it with a higher taste. And we want to understand we are tiny, insignificant. We want to dissolve the subtle body and bodily concept of life. We want to dissolve the false ego. We become tiny, insignificant, humble servant. So these two worldviews are like day and night, actually. And we can imagine one end is the day of the materialist, other end is day of spiritualist. And in between is a broad spectrum of all kinds of mixtures and shades and grades. And spiritual life, devotional service, is actually meant to bring about this transformation, that the day of the materialist eventually becomes our night. That's actually what Krishna consciousness is meant to bring about. We are meant to transform our tastes, our likes and dislikes, our worldviews, our patterns of behaviors, our very heart. Otherwise, how can we develop bhakti in that heart, right? So, but this transformation cannot be imposed and forced on people. It can only be inspired. Yes. Everybody has to do that internal work at their own pace, and so on. And maybe not everybody even wants to transform. But in any case, I simply want to share these points to set a foundation to every further discussion, because even the topic of mother, we will hopefully get some insights in due course tonight, that in spiritual life, in its culture, mothers play a super important role. They're very, very important. Mothers of all levels. As we know, Krishna gives us 7 mothers. Whereas in material life, nobody even talks about the importance of mothers. This is not really a topic. Yeah, right? Except for Mother's Day. And even then it's mainly a commercial interest. Let's be honest here. You know? Yeah, so much just as a little introduction. So let us invite as first speaker His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Swami Maharaj. And he will enlighten us on the 7 mothers. He will introduce the 7 mothers overall as an overall presentation, and then we will narrow it down. The next speaker will have 3 mothers, and then we will go down to 1 mother, like that. Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpataram Yascha Kripa Sindhuvya Evacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. First, I'd like to convey my thanks to Mother Devaki for inviting me to speak. It's interesting, we have this expression Mataji, and oddly, this expression has been interpreted by some devotees as a pejorative term, as a negative term, although it's not negative. Mata means mother. Ji is a suffix of respect. It's an honorific in Odishan language. I believe it's Jiyu, and in Brajavasa it would be Ju. So Mataji is honorific respect. It's showing respect. Recently I was in the Delhi area, and sometimes I was overhearing devotee ladies speaking to or referring to other devotee ladies as Mataji. And I thought that's interesting. These are Hindi-speaking ladies. And for them, it's not a problem. It's proper, it's appropriate. In any case. So my subject is 7 mothers. I've made some notes. And just some food for thought as we reflect on motherhood. First, though, let me ask, do we have some mothers amongst us? That is, parents of children. Good. And do we have devotees who have or have had, your mother might not be alive, but who have had mothers or have mothers? Obviously. And yet, this is the point, we tend to forget, to not appreciate. So it is stated in at least one verse. I was looking for this verse. What is the source? Srila Prabhupada refers to it, but doesn't give the source, and it took me quite some time to find it. It's a what is called subhasita, which means it's a saying. It's a good saying, literally, subhasita. That's as far as I've been able to trace it, but it lists 7 mothers, our own mother, of course, then the nurse, then the wife of the guru, the wife of a Brahmin, the queen, the earth, and the cow. What did all of these personalities and persons and entities have in common? This is the idea of the verse. They are all mother, which suggests that the idea of mother is expanded beyond our normal conception of mother as biological mother. That is referring to 6. So, what I want to suggest in the next few minutes is, since we have this tradition of identifying 7 mothers, the aggregate, so to say, all of these mothers together can help us to appreciate in multiple ways how we are dependent beings and are, as such, benefited by our mothers, most importantly, of course, and most immediately, our biological mothers. And speaking of our biological mother, we all have something on our bodies that remind us of our connection and dependence on our mother, and it's called in English the navel. So every time you're in the shower and you're cleaning yourself and you're cleaning your your tummy, your stomach, you can be reminded, oh yes, I have had a connection. This connection was, of course, ended at the time of our birth. And that's something of an irony, considering that our dependence on our mothers continues for quite some years. It's an unusual, possibly unique feature of human species, our dependence over such a long period of our lives. Our own mothers are, we can say, the embodiment of Vatsalya Rasa. If we're thinking in terms of relationship, which is developed in our bhakti tradition in terms of the aesthetics of rasa, what is called rasa theory, then we have what is called Vatsalya Rasa. And the word Vatsalya comes from vatsa, which means calf, as in baby cow. So that leads us to the subject of cow as mother. But that's getting ahead of myself. But it's good to keep this in mind, that this relationship with the mother is one of Vatsalya. And we generally understand Vatsalya as the feeling of the parent toward the child. But Srila Prabhupada explains in a purport in 7th canto, it can be the other way around as well. He's speaking in terms of father and son. He's speaking about Prahlad and his father. His father, Hare Krishna. But the point is just that the relationship is going in both directions, Vatsalya. But what's a general sense, I think, in a perhaps too theoretical expression, but still, I like to say that our mother is the matrix of our very existence. And of course the word matrix is coming from the idea of casting. When you make a metal casting, say you want to cast a bronze bell, you first make the matrix, which is going to receive the molten metal. And then when the metal is poured in and cools, you break the mold, and then you have the bell. So the mother, we don't break the mother, but in a sense, because of the sacrifice she is making, she is also functioning in a similar way, giving her life for the child. And so she is the matrix of our existence. The nurse. As we all know, Krishna, this is an example given in the Bhagavatam, but identified by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur as a demonstration of the mercy of Krishna, the perfection of mercy of Krishna, that he considers Putana, who has come to kill Krishna, as his nurse. And why does he consider Putana as his nurse? Because she has offered her breast milk to him. The nurse is a kind of assistant to the biological mother, and I think we say wet nurse. So she will have a very close relationship with the child, which is very similar to that of the mother, but it's different from the mother. It's still a giving and supporting relationship in which, because of the child's utter dependency, her position is highly responsible, and she is entrusted by the mother to give that assistance. Lebe gating datu chitam tatoyam kamva dayalum sharanam rajema datri. She is regarded as datri. So the example is Krishna. Krishna seeing even Putana as his nurse, and thus when she's killed, she becomes Krishna's nurse. The wife of the guru. The guru is giving education to the child. The child is still in a position of great vulnerability, and the wife of the guru, because the tradition was that guru would be a grihasta, and as a grihasta he has his family, and the wife is assisting him, and in particular she is assisting in the support of, we may say, the material needs of the child. And thus she is supporting the education of the child. And I think a relevant corollary, if you like, to this is the degree of education of one's own mother will have much to say. It'll have a significant influence determining the education of the child. So to say that women should not be educated, all they should do is stay at home and raise their children, I would question this, because the first educator of the child is the mother. So if the mother is educated nicely, she can foster the child's education from a very early time. And we have seen this demonstrated with some of the devotees I've met from the second, even third generation. because the mother is caring so much for the education of the child, because she is educated, the children grow up and become very, very well educated. I can speak for myself to some extent in this regard. My mother was a talented musician. She played piano, she played church organ, and she was also teaching. Since I can remember, she was teaching piano. And she was teaching piano to myself and to my brother from age 5. We were learning. I revolted at age 9. That's why I can't play piano now, but I can play harmonium. But she was also teaching the neighborhood children. And this, for me, was also significant. She was, in this way, also, we may say, publicly conscious. She was concerned for the community, and it made for a very nice community spirit. Children from the neighborhood were coming, they were learning, and then there would be recitals, so all the children would come and their parents. So this was nice. Also, my mother was quite religious, from her Christian tradition, and from her own culture, she was an avid reader of her scriptures, the Bible and related literature, and she would begin her study every day at 5 o'clock in the morning. And this had an impression on me, such that when I met the devotees and they told me we start at 4:30 in the morning with our morning program, okay, no problem. That made perfect sense to me. The wife of a Brahmin. Here I was thinking how we may consider the wife of the Brahmin as being the mother of all of the Varnas. She is a kind of sustainer or maintainer or stabilizer of the Varna system, the social order in general. And because of this, she is a very important influence for maintaining peace in society. The other Varnas are looking to the Brahmins for stability, but behind every good male householder Brahmin is a good, stable householder woman, wife, who is probably also a mother. And so this principle of stability of society is very much sustained through the wives of the Brahmins. Of course, in general, the Brahmins, husband and wife, are supposed to be models of family order and stability for the rest of society. And we all work on the basis of models. Yat yat acharati sheshtas tat tat evitaro jana. So we look to others as models from day one, really, and it continues through life. So if there are good examples of Brahminical marriage, then the wife of the Brahmin marriage, husband and wife, the wife becomes a mother to the society as a whole. Well, speaking of society as a whole, what about the queen, who is, of course, the wife of the Kshatriya? She is also identified as a mother. And here I would suggest The queen is the source of energy and inspiration for the Kshatriya ruler. She is the power behind the powerful, if you like. I was thinking about this earlier today in the game of chess. Who knows how to play chess? So those of you who play chess, or have, you might not admit it now, but you may have played chess. You know the queen is the most powerful figure on the chessboard. She has the most diversity of movement. She's the most powerful of all. Why is that? Because she is the power behind the powerful. Or she is, anyway, it's Shakti, Shaktiman. And the position of the king is one of power. The king is a power broker. He is concerned with gaining power, sustaining power, holding and managing power. That's his main business. But also the king's business is disseminating justice. And sometimes he goes overboard. And therefore the queen is there to soften, to balance, to bring in the element of mercy. There's need for justice and there's need for mercy. Just like Draupadi. When Ashvatthama was being judged, Krishna was saying, Krishna is the male, in this case, the Kshatriya, saying, telling Arjuna, kill him. Draupadi is saying, don't kill him. His mother has suffered enough. She shouldn't have to suffer. So she's showing the heart of the queen. And that becomes essential for, again, the sustaining of society as a whole. Well, the queen is also, by supporting the king, his duty is, of course, to protect the earth. And what is the earth, or rather, who is the earth? The earth is Dharani, she who holds, she who keeps us all from going into the netherworld, and she is another mother. Dharani, the earth, accepts, she is receiving the weight, the burden of all creatures. She's receiving the burden of all creatures, and she is giving, and what is she giving? Her produce. And in the Bhagavatam, the story of Prithu Maharaj, his interaction with Bhumi, she is giving as a cow her milk. Her bounty is regarded as her milk, which she gives to different sorts of creatures depending on their particular needs and preferences. But always she is giving her bounty, unless and until humans are abusing her bounty, which is what is happening today. And then what does she do? She withholds. She holds back her bounty. So it said, Earth is the mother of all beings. And because we are disregarding this identification of Earth as mother, we are abusing Mother Earth, forgetting that she is mother and thinking Earth is to be exploited. And so we have what is called extraction economy. We are extracting from the earth. And this extraction economy is getting us into deep trouble. And this then is showing our disrespect for motherhood in general. That mothers, our biological mother, and respect for her is very closely related to our respect or disrespect for Mother Earth. If we get both of these right, if we get one right, we can get the other right, and vice versa. If not, then we have trouble. Finally, we have Mother Cow. In my research on cow protection in recent months, I've met several people who are very dedicated in cow protection, and they all refer to cow as Go Mata, Mother Cow. And I ask them, what about bull? And they say, all are Gomata. They're either Gomata directly or Gomata, they are the offspring of Gomata. In any case, they're all Gomata. Cows, bulls, they're all Gomata. And of course, in the Bhagavatam, the cow is identified with earth, and interestingly, she speaks. And what she speaks about is her vulnerability, her helplessness. So on the one side we have mother who is protecting child, giving, nourishing child. And then on the other hand we have mother as the recipient of protection because of her vulnerability. And so the task in understanding, appreciating motherhood needs to see both sides of this. The mother is giving benefit, the mother is also in position of need. And that is especially found in the case of cow. I just interviewed one devotee in Vrindavan who keeps cows since many years. He said, taking care of cows is a 24/7 service. It's constant endeavor. So we might say also taking care of children is 24/7, but also taking care of mothers. Proper care. This is also 24/7. So here we have it. 7 different sorts of mother, from whom, I would say collectively, we get a very rich understanding of what actually motherhood is about and how essential it is for us to properly honor. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Did I keep within the time?
Yeah, pretty well.
Pretty well.
I didn't dare to get up and knock. And it's only a few minutes over, so no problem. Yes.
Okay.
Do we have any more questions for Maharaj? I have only one. Yeah. Okay, we'll start with one and we'll see if we get another one. What would you say is the most important quality for a mother to provide this stability, which you were mentioning?
Well, as Vaishnavas, we might want to immediately say the quality is steadiness of sadhana. Certainly, the principle of tolerance is very important. Mothers, I remember also from my childhood, we lived in a, apartment row. So anyway, the apartment next to us, the walls were somewhat thin, and sometimes the mother, the wife of the family next door, could be heard having a real tantrum. I mean, really like cutting loose with I think she was shouting at her husband. And I felt really sorry for the husband and for the children. And, well, I have to say that was the beginning. I was maybe 8 years old or less. That was the beginning of my questioning whether I myself wanted to be getting involved in family life. Although my own family was completely different. My mother was very, very quiet, very, stable, I would say. A culture of tolerance would certainly need to be there. Also, mothers need a stable economic situation. If they're not, if the economic situation is not stable, they're going to be disturbed. And if they're disturbed, then that will be reflected on the family. So it's unfortunate when we sometimes see a marriage of which takes place before economic stability is established by the husband. And this, I've read also, this is high in the statistics of reasons why marriages break up, because of economic instability.